Hello everyone friends. In this tutorial video I will tell you how to paint a picture by the English artist Judd, who combined a flower and a girl. It's quite an interesting idea. And this painting in principle compared to the portrait is a bit simpler because there is practically no portrait here as such. But I think it will look very interesting in modern interiors. As you can see, I start my work with the subtitles, having created the background set, and I used an unnecessary canvas for this, which I previously used as a palette. The canvas is 30 by 40 in size. So the paints I used to mix the background are for the darkest areas. That's Leningrad Umber, Natural and Blue Ferrocyanide. That's the base. Then I mixed in a little white and a little turquoise with them. And you can also add yellowish shades there, again in the highlights and so on. Then after about a day or two the background dried a little bit, but actually it didn't really dry completely. Actually, during this time I started working on the drawing. I began working with a dry brush using bristles and just by brushing off the excess paint I just outlined the main shapes. The beauty here is that you can make as many mistakes as you want, but it's easy to fix everything without using any additional paints. So we brush off the paint in the place where we think our subject will be, and if it turns out that it's not there, well, if we didn't guess the right place, then we just use our finger again, or, well, it's most convenient to use a finger. We just cover that spot with the background color, which hasn't dried yet. So when I've outlined the shapes themselves, and here, look, here's the thing I ran into. For some reason I thought the canvas would be drier again. But ideally, to paint the picture properly and faster, it's better to let the background dry or cover it with acrylic. That's why when I started working with color, I removed the excess paint exactly from the areas where our girl with the flower will be. But still, it turned out that this wasn't enough. Well, ideally, it's better to wait for the background to dry. But still, there's a certain charm when we have blue as our base. You can use pure mixes for skin tones, mixes for the flower, and the blue gets blended in, and it merges, meaning it becomes one whole together with the background, our composition. Look, the first layer, when I did the skin and the flower, turned out quite dark. I'll just say a little about the skin itself, how to mix it. I have the simplest mixture. The main things used are white, yellow, and red. You get a peach color. If you use a little more red, you get a more pink, piglet-like color. If you use more yellow, it becomes too yellow. So the proportions should be about like this to get a peach color. If it turns out too bright, you just need to add more white. This is for light colors, like the base color, mainly for the illuminated areas on the skin. If actually we will, if we need to use it. Well, to mix color for shadows I use English red as well as natural Umberland red and as a moss brown, dark, transparent. But here's a very important point. If we're using a set for shadows, well, for skin and we don't want to mix a shadow color, it's very important to use a mixture with almost no white paint. If you mix in white, you'll get an unattractive pale color, so try to get rid of the white from your brush and mix yellow, red and brown instead. That is, use brown instead of white. Here's the flower itself. Naturally, when we have a blue base, we can just use white to work and build up the base. So this is our very first set of shapes. It turned out pretty dark. I left it to dry for a day so that at least the paint would stick a little. The next day I added more saturation and brightness. As you can see, the colors are now completely different and everything looks much brighter because the paint has set. And look at the very beginning of the work, I used a bristle brush, then I switched to synthetic. Moreover, the further you go, the less soft the brush should be. So here I think there's no point in describing the details. After all, this is just a copy of a painting. I'm just matching the tones of all the areas in the work. It's very important to convey these forms on the skin, to convey the tonal relationships. That is, the brightest areas should match the darkest ones and be within the same brightness range. In the flower itself, Jan, this is very important. Next, like removing and copying, Pyramidia 22 follows. It works with such a large amount of paint, but for the flower, of course, such soft transitions are important. The more realistic you want the flower, the more important it is. Accordingly, there should be thinner layers of paint and softer transitions between them. With the petals, since the shapes are rounded, the lighting naturally can't fall on the petal evenly on the entire surface. Naturally, there are the brightest and the darkest spots, and all of this is in such smooth transitions. Well, if you have any specific questions about how to paint this, write to me or call me. I'll be happy to explain and show you. And the second thing is, if you want, you can come to a masterclass. Actually, I created this painting specifically for masterclasses. You can make a painting like this if you do the background with acrylics so it dries right away. I think it won't be a problem to paint it in 3 hours on a canvas this size. If the canvas is bigger, it might take a little more time. So if you're interested, write or call me. Thank you. We'll paint a picture together with you that will bring you joy in your interior for years to come. Thank you. Well, I'll finish here until we meet again. Enjoy watching. Hope the video helped everyone. Bye. Subtitles.